Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I felt my chair was just moving. What's going on?
Did anyone else feel that earthquake?
An earthquake rattles parts of BC's south coast.
You can feel the floor moving.
Shaking nerves and reminders to be ready.
In light of this more minor earthquake, and we know that we're expecting a big one.
Plus,
we have seen multiple weak layers form within the snowpack.
Avalanche experts warn of dangerous conditions across BC.
If it's that unsafe, we shouldn't be heading into that terrain.
And jubilation.
Since 2010, haven't felt like this. Unbelievable.
Team Canada fans revel in the big win over the United States amid political tension.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us at exactly 1:26 p.m. Pacific time here in BC. Thousands of people were rattled by a 4.7 magnitude earthquake. While it didn't cause significant damage and there were no reported injuries, it rattled nerves and definitely sent a reminder. Seismic activity in our region is a real danger. And as Lindsay Duncombe explains, an early warning system may not have reached everyone.
The shaking started just before 1:30 in the afternoon. CBC Radio interrupted with this warning.
Earthquake detected. Drop, cover, and hold on. Protect yourself.
Did anyone else feel that earthquake? I was in the middle of taking an exam.
No reports of damage, but it was all a bit scary.
At first, I felt the ground shaking, then my eyes were shaking. I was like, whoa, what's going on? And I noticed that it could have been an earthquake.
I was sitting at my desk and it was shaking quite bad. It was scary.
This barber shop owner was jolted from a nap.
I was kind of sleepy, and then I felt my chair was just moving. What's going on? And I picked up the phone. I called my wife. She was sitting in the car waiting for the kids. And she said, yeah, I felt that the car was moving. What?
The epicenter was near Sechelt, northwest of Vancouver. More than 5,000 people reported they felt the earthquake. Quakes this strong happen more frequently offshore, less so inland.
Certainly a significant event. People feel it widely. It's still just below the threshold or at which we might expect damage.
BC's Emergency Preparedness Minister says today's quake is a reminder to British Columbians to be prepared.
I'm very grateful that today's event wasn't more serious, but we need to use this as an opportunity to be ready for a big one.
It was also a test of the warning system, and it's unclear if the system passed. Some people received these alerts on their phones, others did not.
It is a federal system, so I'll be working with my federal counterpart to help them understand where there were gaps in the system, because we want to make sure people are well informed and can keep themselves safe in case of earthquake.
To an expert now, CBC meteorologist and seismologist Johanna Wagstaff has been tracking the earthquake for us. Joe, a very busy time. Can you clarify what kind of quake this was?
Yeah, Dan, this is what we call a crustal earthquake. So shallow in the top 10 kilometers of the Earth's surface. We're putting it about 1 kilometer deep, and that's partly why so many people felt it across southern BC today. We get three different kinds of earthquakes. We get these crustal earthquakes. This is taking place in the North American plate. You can see it here from our tower cam. We also get subduction earthquakes. There's the big, deep ones, that mega thrust, big earthquake that we're waiting for one day. And then we get sort of mid-depth earthquakes, ones happening in the Juan de Fuca plate around 40 to 60 kilometers. So these are the crustal ones. It would have been a localized fault connected to the subduction that's happening off the coast. That's just creating localized deformation on the mainland. But again, a reminder that we live in a very seismically active part of the world, Dan.
No kidding. And this wasn't the big one, thankfully. But how rare is this magnitude for our area?
So we do see lots of little quakes every year. Most of them we can't feel. This was a moderately sized earthquake, though. I think the last time we felt anything close to this strength, and I know we've had a few jolts in the past, 20 years, was actually 2001. That's when we had the magnitude 6.8 closer to Seattle, and we did see some damage across southern BC. That was one of those mid-sized earthquakes. We've had a few shallower ones since then, but again, magnitude 5.4 is a fair size. And I know we've seen a few different magnitudes come out from Earthquakes Canada and USGS. We're just working to refine that number. There's different techniques that different agencies use. But, you know, anywhere between 4.8 and 5.4 is very significant, Dan. Interestingly, I calculated the difference between a 5.1 and a 5.4. 5.4 is about 3 times strong. So it'll be nice when we land on that number to justify the jolts that we all felt.
All right. The CBC's Johanna Wagstaff, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Now, numerous people on the South Coast say it was the strongest earthquake they'd felt in some time.
Sitting in the living room, and all of a sudden the whole house started to shake, and it was got to be an earthquake. And yeah, so it just shook the whole house. Nothing fell or broke, but it definitely shook our whole house.
So I was just in the superstore, and then all of a sudden, like, I felt like the shelves shake, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I looked at the guy next to me. I was like, was it just me? Because I thought maybe like they're moving pallets around or something like that. And then he was like, no, I felt it too. I was like, okay. And then I text my mom, and she goes, yeah, I felt it too. So yeah.
It was like a little shock because I didn't feel that never before, and I was a little scared. The windows started to move, and my dog started barking.
I was just studying in my room, and it was like shaking, you know, my bottle of water. It was just shaking everywhere. So I thought it is something like because maybe someone was like moving, but it was an earthquake after finding it out online, yeah.
To other news now, many Canadians have spent the day with hoarse voices after rejoicing in Team Canada's win over the U.S. in Thursday's Four Nations Face-Off hockey final. Janella Hamilton has more from jubilant fans amid the tense political atmosphere.
It was a nail-biter of a game, but Team Canada has won the inaugural Four-Nation Face-Off tournament against their longtime and very recent rival, the United States, in overtime, no less.
Marner waiting. Connor McDavid scores! Connor McDavid for Canada!
And that had many hockey fans here in Vancouver literally jumping out of their seats in excitement.
Ecstatic, unbelievable, great game. Since 2010, haven't felt like this. Unbelievable, unbelievable.
That meant a lot, that meant a lot. I am feeling incredible, exuberant, vindicated, and alive.
The game was won by Ontario native Connor McDavid in his first major men's international tournament, effectively a passing of the torch from Team Canada's captain, Sidney Crosby, to the team's next leader. People packed into local bars to take in the game. Here at Red Card Sports Bar, spectators were proudly sporting the maple leaf. With heightened tensions between Canada and the United States due to tariffs and 51st state talk, the game was about much more than just hockey.
This win means we need to carry this momentum forward. I think this is reflective of the passion that we have in this country right now. And I hope the rest of the world takes it as a statement that we're not a country to be messed with.
While relations between Canada and the United States remain frosty, I think it's safe to say the game garnered the attention of these two respective nations. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Metro Vancouver has decided to stop annual funding for the Fraser Basin Council in its 2026 budget. Its work focused on climate action, protecting watersheds, as well as water resources. As Pinky Wong reports, the change comes as the regional body tries to save money.
Metro Vancouver is trying to cut costs. The board directors held a meeting Friday to decide which initiatives to continue funding in the 2026 budget. This comes after Metro Vancouver has been criticized over a 5 times over budget wastewater treatment plant on the North Shore, along with how it spends money on remuneration, expenses, and travel. The 41 directors discussed their partnerships with the PNE, the Seymour Salmon Society, and sustainability, innovation, and culture groups. They ultimately voted to discontinue funding the Fraser Basin Council starting in 2026.
It was found that a large component of the funding had been going into their general operations and not specifically into outreach programs. And I think that that was a concern for the board.
Metro Vancouver has been funding the Fraser Basin Council since 1997. The council says its work on flood management and mitigation is important to the Lower Mainland.
Obviously disappointed, somewhat surprised. We've had a relationship with Metro Vancouver now for 28 years. We believe our work on the floodplain mapping is a very valuable tool to help people reduce the flood risk.
This cut would save Metro Vancouver $300,000 in the next annual budget. Friday's meeting lasted 4 hours, leaving some board members frustrated.
I think we have seriously lost the plot.
Others say making substantial cuts will take time.
I didn't expect that we were going to come out of here with millions of dollars in savings, but I did expect us to get to a point where we were making decisions about how we are going to move forward. Remember, the real savings are going to come through the budget process as we go line by line through each department.
The board will discuss the Housing Development Fund and the Zero Waste Collaboration initiatives next week. Pinky Wong, CBC News, Burnaby.
Backcountry enthusiasts are being warned about dangerous avalanche conditions in many regions of BC this weekend. As Michelle Morton explains, people are being urged to stay out if they are not trained.
After a cold and dry couple of months, avalanche experts are warning a series of storms moving in this weekend are coming with mild temperatures, creating dangerous conditions on the mountains.
We have seen multiple weak layers form within the snowpack. Now that we are seeing new storm snow accumulating in the mountains, we are expecting some of these weak layers to wake up.
And he says there's already high danger for the South Coast and Vancouver Island on Friday.
Things are going to be trickier in the interior, where we are seeing the storms are just starting on Saturday. So we're not exactly sure where the danger is going to be the highest.
These concerns are being raised days after a skier died in an avalanche near Golden, the first avalanche fatality recorded this year. Avalanche Canada says 12 people died in 2024. To stay safe, anyone heading out to the backcountry over the weekend is being advised to plan ahead, train, and pack essentials for their trip.
If it's that unsafe, we shouldn't be heading into that terrain. Again, let's save it for another time when we know the conditions are aligned, when it's great, when the snowpack is settled and steady and not as hazardous as it can be.
Meanwhile, the BC River Forecast Centre says with some snow melt expected, a high stream flow advisory and flood watch have been issued for some areas, including the South Coast, Vancouver Island, and the Nicola region.
So we're kind of coming into this cycle with certainly snow on the ground, but below normal snow, and really expecting quite a transition into this weather with some more moderate to heavy rain and warm temperatures. So expecting that that's going to melt a bit of the snow that we do have up there and contribute to a little bit more runoff in the rivers as we go through the weekend.
Avalanche Canada says the series of storms are expected to continue into next week, and the danger is going to be elevated for the next little while. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Let's bring in Russ Slickett, our meteorologist, with a look at the weather, and that's concerning news about the avalanche risk.
It is, and we tend to see that avalanche risk increase, Dan, when occasions when we get the freezing level going up and down, and you get warm events with rain, colder events, and the snow layers are unable to bond properly, and that is likely going to be enhanced, as that gentleman from the River Forecast Center was talking about, with the high stream flows as well. Warmer air moving inland constantly. I want to show you what's happening around the Lower Mainland here. A computer model forecast showing us that the downpours right now are going to taper off overnight. Saturday morning's rain is relatively light and intermittent. Saturday afternoon, take cover. Dog walkers, don't get out there tomorrow afternoon, because that one looks like it's really going to be wet. So your 24-hour forecast for Metro Vancouver, I'm convinced the rain becomes lighter overnight and tomorrow morning. Somewhere between noon and 6 tomorrow. Heads up for the downpours.
Good advice. Thanks, Russ.
You're welcome.
COVID-19 killed thousands of people in this province, but StatsCan says deaths from toxic drugs also rose during the pandemic years. More on the numbers and the people after this.
I think it's important to give a human face to the stories that we hear every day, the people that they affect. And I think talking to those people is what really gives us the true sense of the impact of the stories that we're hearing.
To health news now. The BC Centre for Disease Control says influenza activity is high and continues to increase in this province. And so Rob Sundu reports it says the number of positive cases across the country measures up to 2020.
If you have noticed more coughing and sneezing around you, there's a reason behind that. The latest data from BC Centre for Disease Control shows a 29% increase in influenza type A cases compared to 2 months ago.
We see influenza continuing to increase week over week, with as many as almost a third of all people tested for influenza are turning up positive.
The BC CDC says influenza cases in the province are at interseasonal highs. Wastewater trends have also continued to increase and remain elevated in most sites across BC.
There can be a very long tail to these influenza seasons.
Medical experts say Canada's respiratory virus season got off to a late start this winter. Last week, the Public Health Agency of Canada noted flu activity was widespread in Ontario, Quebec, and BC.
Normally it would be like one really bad flu, or maybe you get two really bad flus throughout the season, but this year it's been kind of more of a lingering one.
I experienced a little bit difficult this year because when I affected with the flu, I feel like it was a very pain, the whole body, and sometimes it was tough to move.
Health Canada says influenza is among the top 10 leading causes of death in the country. Pre-pandemic, it resulted in approximately 12,000 hospitalizations and 3,500 deaths every year. Health Canada says people with immune-compromising health conditions, older adults and young children are at a greater risk of influenza-related complications.
It's not too late to get vaccinated. In the meantime, people, as they become ill, they can stay away from family members, they can stay home from work and school to keep from spreading it around.
Meantime, the report from the BC CDC shows respiratory sensational virus, also known as RSV, test positivity is on the decline, though wastewater viral loads still remain high throughout the province. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
A new Statistics Canada report, meanwhile, shows life expectancy in BC dipped during the COVID pandemic. But as the CBC's Rafferty Baker reports, the main causes are different for women and men.
Mona Woodward remembers the pandemic years well. She says for drug users like herself, things got a lot harder and more dangerous.
There was nobody around and it was scary. It was really, really scary. You just had that eerie feeling.
Now a new report from StatsCan shows that life expectancy dropped in BC during the pandemic, a worldwide phenomenon. But the report notes toxic drug deaths rivaled COVID-19 infections for that drop. For women, COVID was number 1, with drug deaths number 2. For men, that was flipped. Drug poisoning deaths were the main factor reducing men's life expectancy anywhere from 1 to almost 2 years during the pandemic. One of BC's top doctors says they wanted to look beyond COVID.
What were the impacts outside of that as it related to all of the societal type impacts that came with both the public health response, but also what we saw happen with the drug supply, which became increasingly contaminated and even more lethal and toxic than it had been.
Bain Smith says limits on gatherings as well as physical distancing led to more people using drugs alone and experiencing mental health stress. No surprise to Woodward.
I feel as a drug user that it really pushed a lot of us to use in isolation, and that put us at risk for overdose.
Bain Smith says by 2023, life expectancy for women in BC had returned to pre-pandemic levels, about 85 years old. For men, the 2023 data still hadn't shown a return to a life expectancy peak of 81 years. Rafferty Baker, CBC News, Vancouver.
It was a rainy day in the capital. This was the view over Victoria from the harbor. Gray skies, wispy clouds, and boats anchored in that sometimes choppy water. After the break, meteorologist Russ Lacate will join us for a BC-wide weather picture as the weekend arrives.
This is Vancouver is a new CBC podcast where we explore the issues, the stories, and the people that make this place home. Listen to This is Vancouver wherever you get your podcasts.
Back to one of our top stories now. Fans across Canada still basking in that victory over the U.S. at the Four Nations hockey face-off. As Sarah Levitt reports, with political tensions simmering between the two countries, it's seen as a win beyond the ice.
From sea to sea to sea and even abroad, Canadians are basking in the glow of an epic win at the Four Nations Cup.
It's a big thing. It's like we won the world.
One of the best experiences of my life. Very proud to be Canadian right now.
I was really happy.
Like, you can't lose to the U.S., right? So it was the best moment.
Canada's success in hockey is renowned, but the United States has become a powerhouse of its own.
That's going to do it. A hard-fought Team USA victory.
They had beaten Canada 3-1 in their first meeting of the tournament, so Thursday night's game had an edge. Scrappy, tense, with an overtime close, making the ultimate win even better.
In that room is proud to be a Canadian. And yeah, did we need a win? Not only like our team, but Canada needed a win.
A sentiment felt by many after a month filled with Donald Trump's tariff threats and comments about Canada as the 51st state.
You're not just playing for the maple leaf on the front of you anymore. You're playing for the whole country, and to kind of show him, like, look, we're proud. This is our game. Leave us alone.
It's a pivotal time to show our force, a great nation.
I don't know. It's really nice to be able to kind of like stick it to the man a little bit. Like, I don't know if I can say that.
This is the Canada-U.S. stuff that has been going on over the last month and a half. It was great to see for the country, for the player. You can't write a better script.
A script that even had Canada's political leaders united, perhaps showing sport can bring people together, for a moment at least. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Now, two premiers were in Washington to pitch their anti-tariff message. They met with American governors on the sidelines of their annual summit in the U.S. Capitol. As Katie Simpson reports, while there's opposition to tariffs among the governors, many are still firmly backing President Trump.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford and Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston spent their day working meeting rooms at a downtown Washington hotel, trying to convince American governors of all political stripes to speak up and push back against tariffs.
What's shocking to me is how misinformed a lot of elected officials down here, how critical Canada plays in their economy and their critical minerals and their energy in manufacturing is aluminum and nickel and potash and uranium. So when we tell them all this, they're like, wow, we didn't realize this.
I believe we'll get through this. This is a relationship that has survived a couple hundred years, depressions, wars, all kinds of highs and lows in the relationship. And I believe we'll get through this, and we'll just do everything we can to make sure we get through it faster.
This is the second trip to D.C. in a month for both premiers. Neither think a breakthrough moment is imminent, but they defended their plan to keep trying to convince as many people as they can that tariffs will not just hurt the Canadian economy, but the American economy too. In speaking with governors at this conference, we found there was mixed reaction to tariffs. While some Republicans supported Donald Trump's plan, some Democrats were opposed.
We're working through all of it, and the White House wants to reset the deck and wants to bring manufacturing back home, and I think that's a fantastic idea.
It's not good. I like Canada. It's my favorite 51st state, and we bring down, that's a joke, by the way.
I know, the thing is, in Canada, that's not going to go over as a joke.
Okay, leave that outside. But we bring down hydro, we bring down energy. The idea of putting a 20% tariff on that is terrible.
Canada becoming the 51st state really seemed to be a punchline, as you just heard, even from Democrats. The outrage among Canadians not necessarily resonating with some of these state leaders. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
For a second time, Israel has received remains that militants claim belong to October 7th hostage Shiri Bibas, after the first body was found not to be her. And as Crystal Gumansing has more.
For this hostage family, there is no closure, no certainty. Our painful journey is not over, says the sister-in-law of Shiri Bibas in a recorded video statement. October 7th continues. Late Friday, Israel received a coffin said to contain the remains of Bibas for the second time. Tests determined the one Hamas sent Thursday was not her or that of any other Israeli hostage held in Gaza.
And I don't begin to understand what Hamas was thinking. Did they think we wouldn't figure it out?
One of the saddest days I can remember. And rage towards the Hamas, and frustration to our government who did not bring them back home.
The Bibas children in particular became the symbol of who we are and who we're fighting against.
Clutching the boys' photo, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the children were murdered in captivity by Hamas. Hamas disputes that and has said Shiri and the boys, Ariel and Kafir, were killed in an Israeli airstrike. Their father and Shiri's husband, Yarden, was also taken hostage October 7th. He was released earlier this month.
I will not rest until the savages who executed our hostages are brought to justice. They do not deserve to walk this earth. Nothing will stop me. Nothing.
That rage is plunging the future of the ceasefire in Gaza into further doubt. The first phase of the ceasefire is set to end on March 1st. Dozens of hostages have been exchanged for Palestinian prisoners, but the Trump administration's proposal to take over Gaza has complicated negotiations.
If I were them, I'd release everybody, or they're going to face total annihilation right now.
A test of Hamas and Israel's commitment is coming. 6 more hostages, 4 of whom were kidnapped on October 7th, and more than 600 Palestinian prisoners are set to be released Saturday. Crystal
Gumansing reporting. A trip to a sunny destination is something most people look forward to, but some Manitobans visiting Mexico were instead counting down the days till they could go home. As the CBC's Felicia Adam reports, many of them fell ill at an all-inclusive resort in Playa del Carmen.
Joel Boyle is happy to be home after 6 days in Mexico. He and his wife hired to photograph a wedding at Sandoz Playa Car, an all-inclusive resort in Playa del Carmen. They saw it as a chance for a family trip.
It was supposed to be a really enjoyable experience, but it was an absolute nightmare.
2 days in, Boyle says people around them became ill. He thought nothing of it until his entire family became sick. His 2- and 4-year-olds hit the worst.
Just lifeless, no personality, could barely speak.
The group Boyle was part of had 33 people in it. He says only 2 were spared. While there, he spoke to 4 other wedding groups.
Every single one stated the same thing, with at least 80% of their numbers being sick.
Nelson Azevedo was the officiant of that wedding. The bride, his niece, also fell ill.
It destroyed the whole trip. My niece's wedding was postponed. She couldn't make it. She got attacked really bad.
Boyle and Azevedo say their complaints were dismissed, with multiple staff telling them the same thing.
You must have been sick before you got here. Nobody else is sick. Like, it's just, you'll be fine. Our water's fine, our food's fine, everything's fine.
CBC Manitoba was contacted by people across Canada that recently stayed at the resort, from Saskatchewan, Vancouver, and Ontario, all facing similar illnesses while staying at Sandoz Playa Car. Many questioning if cleanliness at the resort had something to do with why they got sick.
There was just this raw sewage smell in the air, and that raw sewage smell seemed to permeate the food. Everything, all the food there looked amazing, but every bite was just wrong. Something was off.
When asked about wedding groups falling ill, Sandoz Playa Car said, "We hear that both the United States and Canada are currently experiencing a significant increase in cases of gastrointestinal illnesses, primarily related to norovirus, but also seasonal flu. Maybe there's some correlation." Boyle and a dozen others are filing complaints, calling on the Mexican health authorities to investigate, hoping that no one else experiences what they did. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Oscars are reportedly considering a rule change following backlash that 2 Best Picture nominees used artificial intelligence. Magda Gabrisalasa shows us how it could change the awards race.
They do not want us here.
The Brutalist is up for Best Picture at the Oscars, and its star Adrian Brody nominated for Best Actor. But last month there was backlash after news spread the production used artificial intelligence.
They've just used like a very small percentage.
The film reportedly used Reese Speecher to tweak the lead actors' voices while they were speaking Hungarian. The tech was used in Oscar contender Emilia Perez 2, helping increase the vocal range of the musical's lead, Carla Sofia Gascon.
What you doing?
While this dialect coach is less worried about the limited use of AI in these films, he says its use in other areas raises concerns for the future.
We're seeing in parts of the industry like voiceover actors, commercial voice actors, gaming industry as well. AI is already taking over.
Concerns about AI were a driver of Hollywood's 2023 strikes, during which writers and actors negotiated some protections. But now the Academy behind the Oscars may be ready to weigh in too. It's considering changes requiring films to disclose if AI was used, according to Variety.
I do think that directors, actors, studios, it is a responsibility to them to give audiences kind of the whole picture.
We usually have a lot of traction.
But this post-production expert is reminding audiences that Hollywood movie magic has always included manipulation tools.
You're taking away pimples all the time. You're taking away, you're making people look younger, old. I mean, it's all cheating, right? It's cheating for a creative benefit.
But some of that creativity may call for more clarity come April. That's reportedly when the Academy is expected to roll out a new guideline for Oscar submissions. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
Catholics worldwide are keeping a close eye on the health of Pope Francis. The 88-year-old pontiff has been in hospital since Valentine's Day. As the CBC's Megan Williams reports, it's leading to speculation he may choose to resign.
Well, it was a week ago that Pope Francis was brought from his home inside the Vatican, the Santa Marta guest house, to Gemelli Hospital, where he initially was treated for bronchitis and now for double pneumonia. There is no word of him getting out. There are thousands of pilgrims pouring into Rome for the Holy Jubilee year, but cancellations that the Vatican announced of Pope Francis's participation remain, and there's no talk of him getting out anytime soon to greet so many of the pilgrims who came here, hoping that they would catch a sight of him. His condition seems to have stabilized, and the Pope joked with some of his advisors, saying, well, it doesn't look like there'll be a conclave this time, so that's positive. He thinks that he'll likely get out of the hospital. But there is open talk of his resignation. A top Cardinal, Gianfranco Ravasi, went on Italian radio yesterday and talked about that, saying that he thought if the Pope got to a point where he was incapacitated or couldn't greet people, who couldn't carry out his obligations as Pope, make important decisions, that he would probably opt to resign. The Pope himself has said he thinks popes should be popes until death, ad vitam, but he did also say that if he got to a point where his health deteriorated enough, he would consider resigning as well, something that, of course, the Pope before him, Benedict XVI, did for the first time in 600 years. Megan Williams, CBC News, the Vatican.
So did today's earthquake make you think about getting or updating your emergency preparedness kit? Don't worry, we've got you covered with some important things to include. An expert will join us next. Meteorologist Russ Lacate is back with our BC-wide weather forecast. So besides a whole bunch of rain and some avalanche warnings, nothing going on.
Besides that, I think that there's nothing. So my work is done here, I think. Dan, you know what we're looking at here? It's been wet out there, and it'll be wetter as well. We talked about this a number of times, the fact that it's not sort of just one big, atmospheric river. It's not a Pineapple Express. It's wave after wave along this jet stream. And to give you an idea of what I'm looking at over in the Weather Center, Saturday's storm is a long ways offshore. This is tomorrow's storm. Sunday's is, somewhere in the Sea of Japan, to give you a reference there. So everything is coming at us quite quickly. And what's going to be happening around southern BC with that southwest jet stream, we've heard it throughout the news hour already. Warmer conditions across the interior, potentially increasing our avalanche risk. The only areas by mid-weekend where you're going to see snow in the southern three-quarters of the province might be through parts of Rogers Pass along Highway 1 or perhaps Kootenay Pass on Highway 3. But all other areas, lower elevations, precipitation transitioning over to rain. I want to show you something here, if it comes up in a moment. There it is. We have weather warnings. You'd think there'd be storms everywhere, but there aren't. There's one little warning right down here close to home. So this is north and west Vancouver, Maple Ridge, Coquitlam, all the neighboring sections in the northeast area like Pitt Meadows and along the North Shore communities, Lions Bay through to Squamish. This is for the entire weekend. Rainfall amounts may be in excess of 100 millimeters. Now, what's that going to look like? Well, I'll give you an idea here around the south coast again. So the here and now, if we roll this ahead from right now to same time tomorrow, we've got some pretty heavy rainfall amounts. I want to show you what it looks like by dinner time Sunday as we start seeing rainfall amounts well in excess of 100 millimeters along the North Shore, even through the middle parts of Metro Vancouver on the order of 50 millimeters, perhaps some of the southern communities getting a little bit less than that. But everybody gets wet this weekend locally. Province-wide, what's going on? Wet around the island for sure, wet up the central coast, wet on the north coast. Chilly in the northeast corner only, but warming up to a near record high of 10 above with partly sunny skies for Fort St. John. All areas across the interior, south and central, transitioning into more rain. And it's quite mild as well. Those temperatures up towards 6, 7, 8 degrees. Metro Vancouver, it's double digits this weekend. Pockets of heavy rain both days. Not as bad for the second half of next week. Staying on the mild side. Little something to look forward to there, Dan.
No kidding. Russ, thanks very much. Today's earthquake might have you wondering if you are prepared for emergencies. Last month, after the wildfires in Los Angeles, we spoke with disaster preparedness specialist Jackie Kloosterboer. She shared some tips and best practices to follow when it comes to unforeseen events. You've brought an emergency kit.
I have. This is what we refer to as your grab-and-go kit. This is a kit for the short term, so when you get an evacuation order, you'll have this kit prepared. You can grab it and you can go. And it's got all the basic items that you need. You're not rummaging around trying to grab things in a panic. And I've been on the front line of so many fires, and I've seen people come into the reception centers and they'd have absolutely nothing. And it's devastating. And with a little bit of preparedness, they can be a much different situation for people. So having a grab-and-go kit for the short term, having your home kit for the longer term, this is what's going to get you through.
So let's talk about the short-term grab-and-go kit. What are the essentials that you include in this? And feel free to hold them up.
Okay, so you're going to have water. We can't live without water. Having some snack foods to get you through. You know, toiletry items, having those, your toothbrush, things like that. If you're on medications, having medications. I am a diabetic. If I don't get my insulin, I'm not going to survive. So talk to your family doctor about storing medications. Having a notebook, something to jot notes down. You're not going to remember everything. So having this available, having a light stick. It could get dark. Having a flashlight and batteries. If you wear glasses, having a spare set of glasses.
Even an old pair?
Yeah, next time you go to your doctor, get a prescription renewed, throw the old pair in the grab-and-go kit. And each family member needs one, and so do your pets. If you're evacuating, take your pets with you. So every member of your family needs a grab-and-go kit. Your pets need a grab-and-go kit. They support your home kits. If you can load those into your car, make sure.
And sorry, you also have food there.
Yeah,
before
you
we
can't.
forget.
Yeah, don't forget your
eat,
food.
Right? Yeah. And what do you have here? What do you suggest here?
These are freeze-dried meals. They heat up very quickly. Those work well. The granola bars, foods that are not going to make you thirsty, foods that don't take a lot of preparation. And
now, when it comes to, forgive my interruption, somebody who's thinking about, I got to prepare all this stuff. Do you suggest they buy one or try and assemble something from what they have in their house?
It really depends. If you're not going to put one together yourself, go out and buy one. You'll still have to include like a change of clothes, things like that in it, but you'll have the basics. You can put them together very easily. A lot of workshops you can take that will teach you how to do that. But the key is get it together and get it together before you're facing the disaster.
When it comes to documents, home insurance, driver's license, what do you suggest people there do?
All of your important documents, especially your insurance papers. You know, a lot of people don't even remember who their insurance is with. It comes out of our bank account once a year. So if you know who that is, review your insurance before we're hitting the forest fire season. Make sure you know what's covered. Having, you know, copies of your driver's license, and you never know where you're going to be when you're evacuated. So, you know, having all of that in your kit, you know, adoption papers, any important papers is really important to have.
All right, Jackie Kloosterboer, we appreciate your time and your expertise in sharing this with us. As always, thanks again.
Happy to be here.
The festival in Kamloops is whipping up competition and some of the city's most delicious hot chocolate. The sweet treat coming up. A BC nonprofit is on a mission to make winter sports more accessible for Black people. The Snow Rhino Foundation is hosting its first event at Grouse Mountain, where more than a dozen young people are learning to ski.
I remember having my first experience on the mountain, and it was ecstatic that I was so excited, and I was just mind-blown by the new experience, but I was also very intimidated. And then I looked around, and then I didn't see anybody like me, and the experience itself was already intimidating, so with that extra layer. But then I got into it, I was brave, and then I started to talk to a lot of people in my community, and a lot of them stay away from participating in snow sports for that reason alone. So I started to have a vision of making that accessible to people in my community. There's not anyone that looks like me here in this space. And if you're a Black person, when you go to a space and you're the only person there, it makes it a little bit more challenging and a little bit more difficult to navigate that space.
Even though I've lived in a bunch of other countries, I've pretty much lived all my life in Nigeria and moved here at 36 years old. So being springboarded out of that into this is like a different reality. So we're giving Black children and all the Black minorities out there an opportunity to experience this, to make this a part of who they really are, you know, so that they don't feel removed from the sport like I do at the moment.
We surveyed people, and part of their reasons for not doing it is because they don't see themselves or somebody like them doing it. I hope this helps show them that, yes, people who look like you can actually do it.
I am hoping that by us doing this and establishing it, being a first in British Columbia, it really trickles down and it starts to open minds and just communities to the idea of, you know, being able to access different spaces where you would stay away from. Nice. Yeah. Open up. Yeah. There you go.
Competition at a hot chocolate festival in Kamloops is heating up. All this month, local cafes and restaurants are battling it out for the best and most creative recipes. Our Shelley Joyce went to get a taste of the friendly rivalry.
Oh my God, it's so full. Oh my God.
Some of these concoctions are boozy. Others are decadent and sweet. All of them are in the running for the best hot chocolate in Kamloops.
My name is Sierra. I am a server at the Chook Eatery. We are currently doing a hot chocolate gelato float. A little bit unique. People are loving it.
I'm going to try your festival hot chocolate.
Customers get the chance to vote on their favorite from a whole variety of restaurants and cafes all over Kamloops. It's a friendly competition, but the baristas are not taking the challenge lightly. You could say the rivalry is getting toasty.
My name is Lanny. I work here at Hebrews Cafe. I'm a barista because it's like a whole process to make them. And so it feels like an experiment. This is our special hot chocolate that we do for the festival. And if you haven't tried it yet, please come and try. It's so good.
The s'mores hot chocolate is a complex mix of chocolate, salt, and sweat on the part of the barista, who follows a lot of intricate steps to get this cup exactly right.
We're gonna just add a pinch of salt because salt helps bring out all the flavor, and so it's not too sweet, right? I think, in my humble opinion, I think our hot chocolate is one of the best. It's so full. Whoever's getting this is going to be so lucky.
We've been trying them all over town. It's a fun thing to do, and we take it as a family outing.
I've had some 1s and I've had some 5s.
These hot chocolate aficionados know their brew. They take their voting very seriously.
I like it. It's like soothing. What's your marking on that?
I can't say.
The Kamloops Hot Chocolate Festival continues through the end of the month. It's a fundraiser for the Mount Paul Community Food Center. To vote or to get a list of participating restaurants, go to their website. Shelley Joyce, CBC News, Kamloops.
Gemma Biscotti in that, and I'm in. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube, and of course our website, cbc.ca/BC. We'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Good night.